Welcome to Heartline Stories. Today's story follows Claire, a billionaire hiding her true identity. When a mechanic unknowingly pays for her meal, something unexpected happens that will change both their lives. Will this chance encounter lead to a powerful connection, or will Claire's hidden life come crashing down? You won't believe what happens next. Let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Once upon a time in a small town, there was a woman named Claire. She looked like an ordinary person, but she wasn't. Claire was a billionaire, though she liked to keep it a secret. She loved living a simple life, away from the flashy world of rich people. One day, Claire walked into a small diner. It was one of her favorite places to eat because the food was delicious and the people were friendly. She ordered her usual meal, a simple sandwich and a soda. She sat at a corner booth, reading a book while she waited for her food. A man named Ben, a mechanic, was sitting at the counter. He had just finished a long day of work fixing cars at his shop. He was tired but hungry, so he ordered a quick meal. As he ate, he noticed Claire sitting by herself. She looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place her. When the waitress brought Claire's bill, she found out she had forgotten her wallet. She felt embarrassed but didn't want to make a scene. Claire didn't know what to do. She was too proud to ask for help, but also didn't want to leave without paying. Ben, who had noticed her situation, walked up to the counter. He quickly paid for her meal, not thinking twice. He thought Claire must have been having a tough day and wanted to do something kind for her. After all, Ben had always believed in helping others, no matter who they were. When Claire stood up to leave, she was surprised to see the bill had already been paid. She looked at Ben and smiled, not knowing how to thank him properly. She didn't want to reveal who she really was, so she just said, "Thank you very much for helping me." Ben shrugged and smiled back. "No problem. Just doing what any good person would do." Claire was touched by his kindness. She thought to herself, "This man doesn't know who I am, yet he helped me without hesitation. I wonder what would happen if he knew." The next day, Claire returned to the diner. She wasn't just there for another meal. She had a plan. She decided to pay Ben a visit at his mechanic shop, hoping to thank him properly. When she arrived, Ben was working on a car in his garage. He looked up and saw Claire. She was dressed casually, not the way someone rich would usually look. She smiled and walked toward him. "I just wanted to thank you again for helping me yesterday," she said. Ben wiped his hands on a rag and smiled. "No need to thank me. I was just doing the right thing. We all need help sometimes." Claire was surprised by how humble he was. "I feel like I owe you something, though. How about I buy you a meal?" she suggested. Ben thought for a moment, then agreed. "Sure, but only if you promise not to spend too much." Claire laughed. "I promise." They headed back to the diner together. As they ate, Claire kept wondering if she should reveal who she really was. But she didn't want to make him uncomfortable. Ben was so different from the people Claire was used to. He didn't care about wealth or status. He just cared about being kind. But as they finished their meal, Claire knew that she couldn't keep her secret much longer. Something was pulling her to tell him the truth. What would Ben think when he learned who she really was? Would he still treat her the same way? Or would everything change between them? As they left the diner, Claire turned to Ben and said, "I have something to tell you." What happened next would change both of their lives forever. Claire took a deep breath as she looked at Ben. She knew this wasn't going to be easy, but she felt like he deserved to know the truth. "Ben, there's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice a little shaky. "The truth is, I'm not just a regular person. I'm not even close. I'm actually a billionaire." Ben stared at her, his eyes widening slightly. He looked at her as if trying to figure out if she was joking, but Claire's serious expression told him she was being completely honest. I I don't believe you," Ben said, laughing nervously. "A billionaire? You? How come I've never heard of you then?" Claire smiled softly. "I don't want anyone to know. I don't want people to treat me differently because of my wealth." Ben scratched his head, still processing what she had just said. "So, you're telling me that you're a billionaire, and you've been hanging out with me, a mechanic, all this time, without telling me?" Claire nodded, feeling a little embarrassed. "Yes, and I really appreciate the way you've treated me, Ben. You've never once cared about my money or who I am. You've been kind to me, and that means more than anything." Ben stared at her for a moment, then started laughing, shaking his head. "I don't know what to say, Claire. This is unbelievable. I never expected this. But I'll tell you something. I helped you because you seemed like a good person, not because I thought you were a billionaire." Claire felt a warmth in her chest at his words. She had known all along that Ben's kindness wasn't based on her money, but hearing him say it made her realize how rare people like him were in her world. "You're exactly the kind of person I need in my life, Ben," she said. "People who don't care about status, who value kindness over everything else. That's what matters to me." Ben's smile grew wider. "Well, I'm just a simple guy, Claire. I don't know much about fancy stuff, but I do know that treating people right is the best thing anyone can do." For a moment, the two stood there in silence, just looking at each other. It felt like time had stopped, and all the noise and distractions of the world had faded away. All that mattered was the connection between them. But Claire knew that she couldn't keep hiding who she was forever. She had to face the reality that her life would never be the same once people knew the truth. "Ben," she said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking, maybe you could help me with something. Something that could change both of our lives." Ben raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" Claire hesitated for a moment, then took a step closer to him. "I want to do something big, something that can make a difference in this world, but I can't do it alone. I want you to help me, Ben." His eyes widened in surprise. "Me? Help you? But I'm just a mechanic." Claire shook her head. "You're more than that. You have something special. You have a big heart, and you know what really matters in life. That's why I need you." Ben felt a rush of emotions. He had never imagined something like this happening to him. A billionaire asking for his help? He was just a regular guy who worked with his hands. But something in Claire's eyes told him this wasn't about money or status. It was about making a real difference. "I don't know what I can do," Ben said, looking at her with uncertainty. "I'll show you," Claire replied with a smile. "But we need to make this decision together. Are you in?" Ben took a long look at her, then nodded slowly. "Okay, Claire, I'm in. Let's see what we can do." And so the beginning of something incredible was set into motion. What would their next steps be? How would they change the world together? Only time would tell. Claire and Ben began planning their next move. It wasn't going to be easy, but they both felt determined to make a difference. Claire knew her wealth could help, but it was Ben's hard and simple perspective on life that she believed would make their mission truly special. They decided to start small, working together to support local businesses that were struggling. Claire used her connections to secure funding, while Ben's down-to-earth approach to the community made him a trusted partner. They worked side by side, transforming a rundown street corner into a vibrant marketplace. The small acts of kindness they did every day quickly snowballed, attracting more and more people. Businesses that had been on the brink of closing began thriving again. But with every success, Claire started to feel a bit more uncomfortable. As the project grew, the attention around her started to build. People were curious about the woman behind it all. They wanted to know about her past, her story, and how a billionaire like her had gotten involved with someone like Ben. One day, as they were finishing up a project, Claire looked around and realized something. People had stopped treating her like a billionaire. Instead, they saw her as someone who genuinely cared. Ben had made sure that no one saw her as anything more than the person she truly was: kind-hearted, hardworking, and focused on changing lives. But as her new life became more fulfilling, Claire started to wonder how long she could keep her true identity hidden. Could she keep the world from finding out about her wealth? Could she continue to do good without anyone looking at her for the wrong reasons? One afternoon, Claire received an invitation to an important event, a gala for prominent business leaders who were interested in social causes. She stared at the invite, torn between going or staying with Ben and the project they had started. Ben noticed her hesitation. "What's going on, Claire? You don't seem like yourself." "I've been invited to this gala," she said quietly. "It's a big deal for me, but I don't know if I should go. I don't want things to change." Ben looked thoughtful. "You've done a lot for the community already. If going to that event will help even more people, maybe you should consider it." Claire nodded but still felt conflicted. Her past life, the one she had worked so hard to leave behind, was calling her. But what if attending meant that everything she and Ben had built would be in jeopardy? Would the people she helped see her as just another wealthy person trying to look good? That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, wondering what the right choice was. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Would she go to the gala and risk everything? Or stay in the simple, meaningful life she had built with Ben? The answer wasn't clear, but Claire knew one thing. She couldn't do this alone anymore. She needed Ben's advice and guidance more than ever. The next morning, Claire met with Ben at their usual cafe. He could see that something was weighing heavily on her. She hadn't mentioned the gala yet, but the tension in her eyes told him everything. "I think I need your help, Ben," Claire said, stirring her coffee slowly. "I don't know what to do. This gala, it could open doors for even more projects. But I feel like I've come so far in hiding who I really am. What if everything changes when people find out who I really am?" Ben leaned back in his chair, thinking for a moment. He knew how much she had given up in the past to hide her wealth, but he also knew the woman sitting across from him wasn't the same person she once was. "You've come so far, Claire. You've already shown the world that you care. If this gala can help even more people, then maybe it's time to stop hiding," Ben said. "But remember, it's not about your money. It's about your heart. People will see that no matter what." Claire smiled faintly. She had never thought about it like that. "Do you really think they'll understand?" "Why wouldn't they? They've seen what you've done already," Ben said with a reassuring smile. After a long pause, Claire made up her mind. She would attend the gala, but this time she would go as herself, not hiding behind the image of someone she thought people wanted her to be. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but if she could continue helping people, she would be okay with whatever came next. Later that evening, Claire dressed in a simple yet elegant gown for the event. She knew that her past could never be completely erased, but she was no longer ashamed of it. Her journey had led her to this point, and now it was time to embrace her new path, whatever the future held. As she walked into the grand ballroom of the gala, Claire felt the eyes of the crowd on her. But this time, it wasn't the same. Instead of feeling like an outsider, she felt at peace. The room was full of people who wanted to make a difference just like her. It was time for her to be proud of who she had become. Across the room, a familiar face caught her eye. Ben had come along for moral support, and his presence made her feel even more confident. The evening was filled with inspiring conversations and moments of connection. Claire spoke with several influential people who were passionate about the causes she was working on, and many were eager to collaborate. But despite the flurry of activity, there was still something on her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that soon enough, her secret would come to light. At the end of the night, as Claire was heading toward the exit, a man approached her. He looked familiar but didn't seem to be someone she had met before. He extended his hand with a smile. "Miss Claire?" he said, his voice smooth and confident. Claire hesitated but shook his hand. "Yes, that's me. I've heard about your work. It's incredible what you've done for the community," the man said. "But I couldn't help but notice. You seem familiar. Have we met before?" Claire's heart skipped a beat. Was this the moment when her secret would be exposed? She had never been good at hiding her true identity for long. Ben stepped forward just as the tension grew thick in the air. "Actually, Claire's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. She's really passionate about helping people, and that's all anyone needs to know." The man looked from Claire to Ben, intrigued but not pushing for more. "I'll leave you to it," he said, giving her a respectful nod before walking away. Claire let out a sigh of relief. She had managed to keep her true identity a secret for a little longer, but she couldn't help feeling that the night was only the beginning of something bigger. As she walked out of the ballroom with Ben by her side, Claire knew her next steps would be even more important. It was time to find a way to balance both parts of her life, the one she had left behind and the new path she was carving out for herself. The next morning, Claire couldn't stop thinking about her conversation with the man at the gala. She realized that she couldn't keep living in two separate worlds. It was time to stop hiding and embrace both sides of who she was, the passionate philanthropist and the businesswoman with a fortune behind her. As she sat in her office later that day, Claire made a decision. She would announce her true identity publicly, but not in the way people expected. She wouldn't make it a spectacle. Instead, she would use it to inspire others. She'd show the world that money didn't define her. Her actions did. Claire made a public statement that evening, revealing her full background and the causes she had been working on. Instead of backlash, she received an overwhelming amount of support. People admired her for her authenticity and for using her wealth to make a difference. It wasn't about her money, it was about her heart. Ben, standing beside her, couldn't have been prouder. They had been through so much together, and now Claire was finally free to live as her true self. From that moment on, Claire didn't just help people in small ways. She created large-scale projects that changed entire communities. She knew that her wealth had the power to change the world, but it was her love for others that truly made a difference. The mechanic she had once met, he stayed in her life, and they became close friends. He was one of the first people she helped when she started her initiatives, and he, too, found a new purpose in life. As Claire's life unfolded, she learned that it wasn't just about making a difference for others. It was about making a difference in her own life, too. Claire smiled, knowing that she had finally found peace and purpose. And with Ben by her side, she knew they could tackle any challenge that came their way. Thank you for joining us on this Heartline journey. Sometimes true kindness comes when we least expect it. Never judge a book by its cover. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.